Eyes on me.
1, 2, 3, eyes on her. So, as some of you guys know, about a year or two ago, I came across this really interesting lady, I think on LinkedIn, who was coming out with this a really interesting book, an amazing story, going from a horrific accident and almost losing her leg and going through more than 30 surgeries and developing chronic pain and CRPS, and was out there doing amazing things to help other people learn from her journey. And so we connected, and I asked her if she would come and talk to you guys, and I didn't think she was going to say yes, but she did. And she came and
I didn't think you was going to ask me. I was like, yeah, come.
and it was quite a day, and it was in the middle of fires were going on in her neighborhood, and she still came. I didn't think that was going to work out. And since that time, I think the rest of the country and the rest of the world has gotten to experience Amberly through her TEDx talk and podcasts and radio shows. And if you follow her on Instagram, you know that there's never a dull day in her life. So she was really gracious to agree to come back and speak again. And this go round, I'm going to interview her a little bit, and then we're going to have some time for you guys to ask questions that you'd like to ask. So we're going to be a little bit interactive. And so, Amberly, you want to just remind everybody about you?
Well, I feel honored to be here. I was on a plane, so excited to get here because you guys are my people, and when I get here, I know that we have so much in common, so it feels good to be here. And it was a much easier time getting here without all those California fires. And the first time I was here, I walked in and I said, well, now how long do you want me to speak? And Bree said, oh, just 2 hours. And I went in the bathroom and had like a little momentary freak out, gathered myself, and then I came out here and I thought, well, I'm going to share something that I use that works for me. And it was the first time I'd ever really talked about something I use called Pacer. And I remember writing the letters on the whiteboard. And it's something that later last year, a few months ago, I did a TEDx talk on it, which I was honored to speak more on CRPS and pain and different ways, tips, and tools to overcome pain. How many of you here have chronic pain? Wow. Yeah. How many of you have been diagnosed with CRPS? Okay, so me too. That's my thing. And so what I do is think of different ways to be resilient. And that's really what I put my focus on, because I was in a place where, I was, for those of you who don't already know me, like we know each other from Instagram, and some of you I met last year, but I was hit on my SUV, hit me. I was on my motorcycle and I was hit, and then I had 34 surgeries to save my leg. And I thought, I was a pretty resilient person. I grew up in Texas, and I knew how to cowgirl up, and it wasn't easy growing up when an abusive stepfather, but I overcame that. I cowgirled up. I had an older brother I was his punching bag, and I was like, oh, I'll cowgirl up, got over that. I was like, I can get over these 34 surgeries. I know how to cowgirl up. But it was when I was diagnosed with CRPS, I was like, I don't know how to do this. I don't have any more cowgirl up tools in my toolbox. Like I was stuck in the hospital bed, and it was at a point where I couldn't run. I used to run to kind of clear my head. I used to run to feel good. I used to exercise to feel good. I've been in the fitness and wellness industry for 22 years. And it was really then when I was like, I've got to figure this out. And what can I do? What do resilient people do? And I think a lot of that is, resilient people don't get stuck in the why me. Like, we all know that shit happens, you know, suffering's gonna come, but it's not getting stuck in that if only if. My life would be good if only I didn't have this bad knee, or my life would be good if only I'd gone to a different school, or if only if my parents had more money to give me, or whatever that only if thing is. Resilient people know that, you know, it's time to sink or swim, and especially when you're living in chronic pain, you can let it get the best of you, or you can take action to do whatever you can to feel better. And that's what I love about being here, is there's a different energy here. I've been to physical therapy places, I've been to pain doctors, and you guys have a different energy. I mean, do you feel the good energy in here that you guys bring in? You are totally different from anywhere else I've ever been, because even if you're walking in with a cane, or you're walking in with a walker, you have a different attitude about you. You are resilient, and I love that you offer so many tools here for that. And so I'm just happy to share the PACER, which stands for perspective, acceptance, community, endurance, and rest. And, the whole flipping it from why me to what's next, how can I take action, is our ability to really shift our perspective. And it can change instantly by, I think psychiatrists or psychologists call it benefit finding. Like, what is the benefit? What can I find? Or finding the good, or focusing on the good, or I call it counting your blessings. Because I don't know about you, but I can get in a funk when I'm in a lot of pain. When I'm having one of those days where my body just isn't doing what I expect of it. Whether that's having to walk through the mall, because believe it or not, that's a little bit harder for me than it is to go for a hike. I don't know what it is, if it's the hard surface or what it is, or if I'm at the gym and I'm on the elliptical, and for some reason that day my knee or my ankle or the CRPS just flares up and it's not cooperating, I can really spiral down into the, oh God, this sucks, life is hard, and I have to really be willing and focused to flip it around and go, okay, but what can I do? I'm still here. I can do, if I'm at the gym, I can still do some stuff for my upper body. I can do some weights, and that gets endorphins going and makes me feel good. Or I focus on, there were times when I was stuck in the hospital bed, and people were like, well, how could you find any good when you're stuck in the hospital bed? You don't know whether they're gonna save your leg. I had so many people coming in and telling me the bad stuff, like, people say, oh, well, you're gonna need antidepressants. Well, what are you gonna do? You can't train clients anymore. Oh my God, your leg is so scarred. You'll never wear a bathing suit again. I needed to hear some hope. And I also needed to take an active part in a little bit my grieving, kind of grieving for the life that I did have, and think about, okay, well, I can't do those things. And for a long time, I have to admit, I got real sucked into, I can't run the way I used to. Then I felt like a lot of shame because I didn't look the way that I used to. And then I thought, I'm not good enough. I can't produce the amount of money that I used to produce for my family. So I had to work on my worthiness and think of, okay, well, what can I do? And focus on how can I get better. Well, I can take one action step today. That was just to be able to stand up for 5 seconds. And the 5 seconds led to minutes, led to walking with a walker, led to eventually walking. And now I can walk without a walker. If I go to an amusement park, I still use one of those scooters. My husband and I make him sit in it sometimes. But even like getting here, we were in the office and I was like, excuse my boots, and I unzipped my little carry-on suitcase and I pulled out my old disgusting barn boots that I wore to get here because I knew that it wouldn't, those boots are the most comfortable. They don't hurt my leg. They don't flare me up. And so it's really starting where you are, using what you have, and doing what you can, you know? So what if I have to wear some ugly boots? At least I'm here, you know? Some ugly bar boots. So it's really just, and I will talk forever, so I'm sorry. Let's ask away, ask questions.
Well, I thought maybe we'd start with, in your book, True Grit and Grace, your relationship with your husband, Johnny, is an important part of your recovery, and it comes up over and over again. And I know early on when you had your accident, you were in the emergency room and your femoral artery was stuck out and it was bleeding everywhere. They were trying to contain it and get it back into your leg, and Johnny was running around the room and he was freaking out, and you said something like, "Johnny, can you just be strong for me and cut that out?" And everybody was like, "Whoa, this person is," I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about how you guys not only got through the traumatic episode together, but how you guys worked together on the very long recovery on the backside and maintained a very healthy and supportive relationship.
Well, it's not always healthy and supportive. No, it's good. Yeah, right. Let's just be real. But after the accident, I told Johnny, I was like, "Yeah, man, you were freaking out." And he's like, had your femoral artery, and they were pulling out, and it was snapping back in like a rubber band. See, I was kind of glued down or taped down to the gurney, so I couldn't see all that. And when I had the editor for the book, he said, "This is a love story." And I'm like, "No, this isn't a love story. This is about tragedy into triumph." And he goes, "No, it's a love story." And because thankfully my husband was there for me when I know a lot of people would have left. In fact, the first time I was able to walk with my crutches, the Starbucks is a couple of blocks down, and I was so proud that it was my first trip out to Starbucks, and I'm there with my crutches, and I have my leg propped up, and a guy walks by, and I used to work with him, and he looked at my leg and goes, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" And I was like, "Oh, I was in an accident." He goes, "Good thing I didn't marry you, or I would have divorced you." And I was like, oh, thanks. I'm glad I didn't marry you too. But when trauma strikes or when adversity comes, it doesn't just affect you. Your pain affects your relationship, and especially if we keep trying to stuff it down and we don't talk about it. I know that, my husband he just retired. That's a whole nother story. He's home all the time. And he was a lieutenant with the highway patrol, and he was used to seeing a lot of trauma, a lot of accidents, he got a Medal of Valor for that. We had a big train wreck, and so he'd seen a lot. But when it was so close to home, when it was his own wife, it was totally different. And he freaked out for a while, and he didn't know how to process. And we had to really kind of reinvent how we were together, because we went from being a very active couple where we had jet skis and we jet skied all the time. We had motorcycles and we would motorcycle every weekend. And from that to all of a sudden he became my caretaker. And he had, I was stuck in the hospital bed, and I couldn't even stand up for a long, I couldn't even use the bathroom. He still reminds me how he carried my bedpan for me, and I'm like, okay. But I'm lucky that, he was there for me.
He carried you too, didn't he? When you were at home?
Oh, he's carried me. He's really the hero of my book. He's really the hero.
What kind of tools or things did you learn from a communication standpoint to help keep the communication and keep the relationship strong? Because it's hard to talk when you don't feel well. It's hard to be nice to somebody else when you don't feel well. How did you adapt to keeping the communication in a positive way?
Well, I think for us, I was always the strong one. I could always do anything. I ran a business, and I just was like a machine. I would go, and then all of a sudden, I was broken. And he did not know what to do with me at first. And he had a lot of fear that I wasn't going to get better or I was going to get worse. And sometimes that fear can come across, everybody expresses their fear differently, and a lot of times his came out as anger. You know, he would be angry. And so we really had to learn to communicate, and I had to tell him, and I didn't want to feel like I was complaining, you know, but I had to tell him and learn myself to really embrace the pain instead of trying to suck it up all the time, because I would just try to suck it up all the time and go, and what I was doing was ignoring my body. And it was when I ended up in the emergency room for a kidney infection that went bad. I had a kidney stone that turned into an infection and I went septic. And I almost died, and it was the first time I was really scared. And I looked at him, and he's like, "You're being awfully quiet. What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Well, I'm scared." He goes, "No, you can't be scared. You're my rock. You can't be scared." But I think for us, what has helped is just talking to one another. And for him, like if I say I'm hurting, he knows it's bad. Like if I'm admitting that I'm hurting, he knows it's bad. But sometimes they're so used to, if you're in chronic pain and you have a partner, it gets to where that's your new normal. And sometimes you might be having a really bad day, and I've learned that I've had to really communicate that, or else I can get mean or snappy, and that's no good for anybody. And you know, he'll look at me and go, "Okay, I can tell you're obviously in a lot of pain." And you know, and it's hard because I want to be the wife that I was, that was just carefree and could go and do anything. But I had to accept where I am right now, and I think I call it accepting my new normal, and learn to rest. And I've actually, it's kind of annoying, but now he uses that pacer on me. And he'll be like, "The R is in pacer is for rest, right? Well, you're not doing that." And so he'll call me out on stuff. But I think something that's helped the most is our humor. Like we've learned to laugh at stuff where doctors look at us and go, "Oh my God, are they for real?" Like he will look at the doctor. One time I was having an ankle surgery, and he looked at the doctor and he's like, "Okay, doc, so can she die from this?" And he's like, "Well, no." He goes, "Oh, dang it, I upped her life insurance. She just won't die." And they're like, "Oh my God." And so, you know, humor has gotten us really far, because sometimes it's bad and you need, you know, laughter's medicine, and you just
gotta balance the heaviness with some light. The other person I wanted to talk about is your younger daughter, Ruby. And she's an important, I think, person in the book. Obviously, an important person in the book.
Yeah.
And she was about 1.5 years old.
Yeah, why do I get emotional just thinking about her?
I'm sorry. Now, well, I remember reading about her coming to see you, you know, in the hospital, and not knowing what to do, and you kind of being mom at the same time trying to save your life and save your leg. And how do you keep the mother part of you going when everything else is falling apart?
Well, I think as a mom, for any of you that are moms, I think that your children keep you going. Like, I don't really keep myself going, like I do, but she really keeps me going. And when she first came in the hospital, I basically had to lure her in the bed with candy and fingernail polish, because she was little and she had just discovered fingernail polish. So I was like, because I looked scary. I had, you know, IVs in both arms, and my leg had a halo sticking in it. And so I basically lured her in the bed, and she was one of my biggest, you know, I think it's really important to set goals, small and big, and start off in baby steps. And she was my biggest goal, because I had never been separated from her. And So my goal was, they said, we can't let kids come into your room. You're in ICU. Can't let her in. But if you can sit up in a wheelchair, we can roll you out and you can see her. So that was my motivation. She was my motivation. I could not get in the wheelchair. My blood pressure kept spiking up. The pain was so severe. They thought I was going to like just pass out, or I don't, and so I got to be friends with all the nurses, and they were on the lookout, and the nurses snuck her in my room. And that was one of the happiest times in the hospital, was just getting to see her in the room. And then when I got out of the hospital, and this is, after I was diagnosed with CRPS, and I thought things were just going to get better. And then I was diagnosed with CRPS, and I was like, this sucks. Like, I'm going to live the rest of my life with this pain? I don't think I can do it. And I really feel like my kids, thank God, that's what gave me the inspiration. I thought, well, I need to be there for them. I need to set an example of what a resilient woman is, what a warrior is. Like, I don't want to set an example of, this is what happens and you're a victim, and have that victim mentality, and life, life isn't always fair, but you play the hell out of the cards you've been dealt. And so they've been my biggest inspirations.
I think our kids also have a lot more insight into what we're going through than we realize a lot of times, and I'm sure she has as well. What do you think? What do you think she thinks about CRPS and chronic pain? And what do you think her perspective is on what you've been through?
Well, even when I don't complain, this just came to mind. There was, even when she was 2 years old, and I would go to the grocery store, and I always had crutches, and one day she was throwing a fit, and we were in the parking lot about to get in the car, and she was throwing a fit, and 2 years old, I'm standing by her, she grabs my crutches and she throws them the furthest away from me. And I looked at her, and I couldn't be mad, I just laughed. I was like, that's pretty smart. That's how she's going to get back at me. She's going to see me hop across the parking lot, get my crutches. But she, even though there's times when I don't complain, we'll stand in line like at Michael's, and there's always a long line at Michael's. And we're standing there, and she'll look at me and she'll go, Mama, stand like this. And she'll tell me, like, she's looking out. She knows I'm not complaining about it, but she's like, stand up, just stand on one leg. Or she'll say, here, Mama, I'll carry that for you. And so it shows me that she does have a lot of compassion. And I think that we learn that, and she's seen that growing up. And at school, they have a Student of the Month award, and I was most touched by, she was awarded for empathy. And out of anything that you could be awarded for, whether it's straight A's or, most athletic, I loved that she was awarded most empathy. And my oldest daughter has gone on she wants to be a doctor. She just graduated from UC Santa Cruz. And her whole apartment, the walls are all whiteboards, and it's all like chemistry stuff. I don't know, I don't get it. And I said, Savannah, what made you decide to want to be a doctor? And she said, well, you did, Mom. Seeing all those surgeries, and she's trying to figure out things for CRPS. And so something that happens to you at first, it may seem like a tragedy, but it can inspire others in so many different levels. It's my husband, it's really taught him compassion, and I see how it has softened him, so it can, a lot of blessings.
And another important thing I think that you talk about in your book, and you also talk about it in TED Talk and when you do your podcast, is the role that gratitude plays in you healing.
Yeah.
And I think you and I have talked about that we know gratitude's important, but how do you get the gratitude back when you don't feel well, and when life has kicked you in the gut, and it's just, how do you bring it back when you're not feeling it?
Well, I didn't realize it wasn't like, oh, I have this bright idea, and this is, or it wasn't something I read, or it wasn't something I heard. It was by accident, the whole gratitude thing. What happened was I was in the hospital and I was in and out of surgery. I'd have a surgery, then a day of recovery, and a surgery, and a day of recovery. And in there, I had friends that were bringing me flowers or food, or different nurses that would come in that I wanted to remember their names. And so I started writing a list out of who I needed to send a thank you note. Like, I wanted to thank them for bringing food or flowers. So I noticed when I was writing down the people that I was grateful for bringing me things, and I started focusing on the good instead of focusing on, uh-oh, they might amputate my leg. I don't know. I hope I don't get an infection. This is bad. I may never work again. You know, all those things. I was really focusing on the good, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's always easy, because it's you have to be willing. Like, you really have to be willing to, as soon as you have that thought in your mind, and that could be whether it's your pain, or whether it's after the holidays and you feel like you've gained a little weight, or you don't look right, or you're upset at your husband or your wife. Whatever those negative thoughts are, we have the ability to shift our perspective just by getting grateful. And I really feel like it is medicine, it is alchemy. It does turn what we don't have into what we do have. And it turns what we can't do into what we can do. I just talked to my dad yesterday, and he can be a doggy downer. Like, the glass is half full. And so I talked to him, he was telling me how bad his back is, and I was like, Dad, you're focusing on all of this bad stuff. Like, what's good? What is good going on in your life? And sometimes I feel like we need people around us to remind us of that. Like, I know one day my leg was really hurting, and I was just like, I wish they would just cut it off. I just hate this leg. And my husband was like, I can't believe you just said that. Like, you should be so grateful that you have both your legs. And it was kind of shocking, but it snapped me back into a place of, one day I was at the gym and I was really upset because I was hurting too bad. I couldn't do cardio. And I look up, and there was a lady walking in front of me with no arms. And I was like, okay, I'm grateful I've got both my arms. So I feel like there are so many ways to be grateful, and it doesn't have to be big things. Like, I'm so grateful that for my family, or I'm so grateful for my job. Get really small. Like, for me, if I think back, like, I am grateful to be sitting up in a chair next to you right now when I was stuck in a bed with bed sores for a long time. Like, I'm grateful that we live in a beautiful place and I can walk outside and it's so nice and the air is clear. Well, pretty clear compared to the fires last year. It's clear. And so it's the little things, and it's something I do every morning. It's a gratitude practice, and something I do at night with my daughter. So in the morning, it doesn't matter how early I get up. I always have my morning routine. Like, I got up at 4 this morning to be here, and I still wrote out in my book 3 things. Get your mindset right for the day, and I write out what I'm grateful for. And then at night, I get in bed with my daughter, and we cuddle, and I'm like, well, what was the best part of your day? Also, if you guys need like a little journal prompt or anything, I have a free downloadable gratitude journal on my website. You can print it out and get started if you don't already do that.
Can you write your website on the chat?
Oh, yeah, I'll write it down. And then, okay, it's just Amberly Margo.com. Then actually, I'm really learning about technology, and I hope this works. I do have this thing where you can text 66866. You text the word PACER, and it'll just give you that gratitude journal. It'll give you a link that you just skip. So if that's easier, you can do that too.
What's that again?
If you text the word 66866, 866. Text the word PACER. Now let's see if technology works. I am still learning. I don't know. Tell me if it works.
Don't look at me.
I don't know. We'll see. But you can get a free downloadable journal. It really works for me, and it's something I do every day. And if you get in the practice of doing it, it gets to be it gets to be a part of your life, and it really shifts your mindset.
Another thing I want to ask you about is, we talk a lot in our practice with the clinical team about trauma and PTSD symptoms, and when people are experiencing traumatic experiences and then trauma-related symptoms. And obviously you went through a horrible traumatic event, but the trauma doesn't necessarily just go away after you recover from all your surgeries. I guess, A, are you still experiencing or dealing with trauma from that? And B, if you are, how do you manage it?
Well, right after the accident, so I had a car, I got rear-ended, my car was demolished. So when I was feeling strong enough, I got a motorcycle, or I rode my motorcycle, I had my motorcycle, hit motorcycle demolished. So I bought the biggest truck. And I was like, now if somebody hits me, I'll be fine. So one of the things I think I wanted to do anything that I could to feel safe.
Bigger truck.
Yeah, get a big truck. It fixes everything.
Get a lift so the cars go under you.
Yeah, there you go. So he knows his truck. I wanted to feel safe. I think that it puts you in like fight or flight. So, and whether I realized it or not, I didn't know that some of the things that I was doing was like I was on survival mode. And sometimes even now, when my pain's really bad, I feel that rush, like fight or flight. It feels like I've got to get out of this pain. I can't stand it any longer. I've got to do something. And distraction helps a little bit. And this may seem crazy, but for me, distraction on good things. I don't want to distract myself by watching news that's really depressing or something like that. But I think so much of how we're affected is our environment affects us. So even with social media, me thinking of distraction is a lot of times if I'm in a lot of pain, if I look through Instagram, it takes my mind off of the pain for a little while, and I look but I don't want to follow people who are depressing. So if there's somebody that's depressing or negative or they don't make you feel good, just don't follow them, unfollow them. But I think that with the trauma, I tried to step it down a lot, and it wasn't until I really let it rise to the surface and see it eye to eye for what it was, and I talked about that with people I trusted, was I able to really look at it and start to heal. And one thing that really helps me is getting out there and being of service. And when I say that, some people might go, how can I be of service? I can't get out. How can I be of service? I can't drive on my own. Well, I found ways to be of service even when I was stuck in the hospital bed. I could make a phone call. And as soon as I got out of my, how I was feeling and was of service to someone and asked them how they were doing, it was like medicine. I felt better. So that has been a key role in trauma for me, is also being able to connect with others like you that know what it's like. There's something magic that happens when you can meet someone and you go, oh my God, you totally get it. Like, I'm sure all of you, I saw you two know each other, you meet each other, you're like, that's my people, they get it, we have something, we may be totally different, we may be different ages, totally different accidents that caused our chronic pain or situations, but we get it on a different level. So I think that when you can talk to someone that you trust and have a safe place to do that, it's very healing.
you like to work out, you like to
Yeah.
exercise, you like to be active. How do you do that on the days when you don't feel like getting out of bed?
It's hard, but I know that if I move my body, I know that I will feel better.
Start to feel better later.
I know I'll feel better. And it may be hard, and I just try to baby step it all the way and do what I can. You know, before I had a lot of expectations on me. I mean, I set a record in Texas for the mile. I was like, the day of my accident, I had my running partner that we used to run together, and we would time ourselves, and we were very serious. And you know, he's 10 years younger than me. That day, I beat him on our run. Like, I'm a little bit competitive. And so I can I can be really hard on myself. But if I've learned to have a little more compassion, and if I can get to the gym, and even if I do 10 minutes of light weights, guaranteed I'm going to feel better. So I know, you know, it's scientifically proven that if you move your body, you release endorphins and those chemicals that make you feel good. It's like your body's natural way of feeling good. And so I know that on days too where I hurt because, you know, I walk with a little bit of a limp, or I'm constantly compensating, and so now my back, you know, is a little off. And I know that if I don't work out, I am going to feel worse. So in the long run, my motivation is because I want to feel good and it helps me stay sane a little bit. I'm still a little crazy, but it really, I know that I'm a better mom, and I'll even tell my daughter, I am going to be a nicer mom if you just let me go work out right now. And so now she loves to work out, and so she wants to go to the gym with me, or she wants to go for a walk or a run, which I love. And so I had to think of different ways, and sometimes you might need a little help, need one of your friends. Surround yourself with people who can give you the inspiration because the other day, Ruby's like, Mom, come on, I want to go for a run. And I looked at my husband and I was like, oh, it's such a shame I can't go for a run. And he's like, ride your bike. And I was like, oh, yeah, I can ride my bike along her while she runs. And so I rode my bike. There's always a way to figure out how to do something. It's all figure outable. You can always do some kind of movement, whether that's, you know, sitting in your chair and doing something, laying in your bed. I laid in the bed and did something. I had the doctors install a pull-up bar over my hospital bed. I had one of the trainers bring me some dumbbells, and I did like 3-pound dumbbells because it made me feel better mentally.
You mentioned a couple times today shame. And it seems terrible that when we go through life happens, things happen to us, not our fault, that we would at the end of it start to feel shame about something that we can't control or not to be blamed for. But it happens. And maybe you could talk a little bit about how you felt shame and how you got over that.
Yeah, it was... I thought that I had dealt with a lot of childhood shame, and shame is heavy. It's so heavy, and it just can pull you down. I had not really talked much about the sexual abuse that had gone on as a child, but it wasn't until I was stuck in the hospital bed and that I realized, you know, I used to literally run anytime I felt shame or sadness or depressed or anxious. I would run. And it was when I was stuck in the hospital bed, and now I had shame of the way I looked, shame from stuff in the past, and everything just brought me down to a place where I thought I had like a glimmer of hope. And it wasn't until I reached out for help which was the hardest thing for me to do because I was taught, don't show your vulnerability, you know, hide your crazy and be a lady, just get her done. You know, we have all these sayings in Texas that were like stuck in my head, and that was my motto. And it wasn't until I reached out to somebody and said, I need some help, I'm not doing very well. And that led to a friend of mine helping me and saying, you know what, I want to introduce you to another friend. And before long, we had a group of women that would get together on a weekly basis, and we would share what we were going through, and we would share how we felt. Because, man, when you're carrying around that shame, it's hard. I did not want to continue living, but I was too scared to die. And it wasn't until I was in full acceptance of, well, this is the shit that happened, so what can I do to feel better, that I started to go, okay, well, I can make some lemonade out of these lemons. It was a really freeing experience when I decided to just wear whatever the hell I wanted to wear. Like, I was so embarrassed of the way I looked. It carried so much shame. I mean, I hated the way I looked. I didn't want anybody to see me. I didn't want a stranger to see me. I was embarrassed of the way I walked. And I thought, who's going to love me? I'm broken. Who's going to ever want to train with me? I'm broken. Let me tell you, when I finally was able to go back to work, my business boomed. You know why? Because other people felt the same way. And they were like, oh my God, she got through that and she's training again. Well, I want to get through that. I want to do that. And so my business started booming. And it's like, because we all need hope, and we all need to connect with people that have been through those hard times. And once we realize that we have a choice in how we want to feel, we take our power back. So I just decided one day, you know what? This is not my shame to carry. You know what? My leg is a symbol of what I have survived. And I forget that my leg looks the way it does. I totally forget because I'm so used to it. I'm like, and in the line at TSA, you have to like take your shoes off and stuff. And not only did I set my suitcase, set the alarm off, and I got checked by TSA and they did the swipe.
Because she
that
brought
alerted.
books for you guys.
Yeah, they set off the sensors. My leg, because it's full of metal, sets off the sensors. And I'm like, oh my God, I hope I make my flight. And one of the guys that was in line behind me, I'm holding the line up, he goes, I just wonder what happened to you. You know, and I'm like, what do you mean? I just set off the sensors. Sorry about that. He's like, no, your leg. Well, in the past, I would have been so ashamed. Oh my God, he saw my leg. I'm so embarrassed. Now I'm just like, oh yeah, no, I got hit by an SUV and I survived. I just won't die. You know? And then I got on the plane and I sat next to a lady who was awesome. We were friends. I'm like, we're lifelong friends now. But I talked to her the whole way here, and she said, you know, I noticed you in the airport. And as a woman, I thought, wow, how confident that she can wear a dress with her legs scarred up. And I think that if you take baby steps every day, you start to learn to love yourself a little bit more. And that it helps when I had a doctor that looked at my leg and he looked at it differently. He looked at it like, wow, I saved that leg. And like it was his work of art, it was his masterpiece. And so I started to be able to look at it differently. And so if you can make these baby shifts, and it's not going to happen overnight, it takes a while, and you can slowly start to let go of that shame that's not yours to carry, it is freedom. And, you know, that's one of the things every year around this time of year, I always think of one word that I like to focus on, that like my word of the year. What is my word of the year? My word of the year was freedom. I want freedom. I want freedom because I want to travel. And it's not easy when you're in chronic pain. You have to plan it out. Like, okay, I've got a suitcase that I can use as a cane, my carry-on, I can lean on it. What shoes am I going to wear? What clothing am I going to wear? Can't have a connecting flight, going to fly. Like, it's a process. But if you just take those baby steps, it's freedom. And you can still have the life that you've always imagined. It's your choice.
I have some other questions, but I thought maybe I'd take a break and see if you guys have some questions you'd like to ask me.
How old is your youngest daughter now?
She's 11.
11, so this is about 7 years ago. This gives me a time. And what is your business?
Now, I was full-time personal trainer. That's
Personal
all I did, training clients. I
What a
had
great job.
trainers that worked for me. And then when I got back into training, of course I overdid it and I was on my leg all day, and there was one day I was training a client and my husband walks over and he goes, "Get off the gym floor, you're bleeding out." Because I had a surgery and I had like a trail of blood. I'm like, oh. And so I was trying to like prove that I could do it, and I was like, okay, I proved that I can train clients again. But one of the things that I really want you to use today in everything you do, whether it's what you're eating, the friends that you're with, how you're working out, what choices you're making, I always ask myself, how's that working for you? Like, I was insane. I was doing some crazy stuff, like trying to train 1 million clients a day and killing myself and hurting for what? Like, that was killing myself, and I was no use to my family when I got home. So I always say, how's that working for you? Eating cookies? How's that working for you? Is that helping your waistline or hurting the waistline? Hanging around that negative friend, how's that working for you? Are they bringing you down or are they lifting you up? So I had to really go, how's that working for you? And so I stopped doing as many personal training clients, and now I do online coaching as well.
That's awesome.
Because I love working with people.
Did the SUV survive?
I tore the bumper right off that SUV. Seen the other guy. Yeah. Yeah. The SUV. It was a brand new Ford Flex, and tore the bumper.
Do you still have the hardware, or?
I do. I think that's why I set off all the
alarm.
yeah.
So you have screws and plates?
I had plates, and somewhere in between like surgery 25 and 28, I think, my legs every step I would take, my leg would bow. Like, not where it's supposed to bow. My leg would bow, my shin, it would collapse. And so I went to Dr. Wiss and I was like, I think something's wrong. And he looked at the x-ray and I had broken a titanium plate. And he comes back and he goes, yeah, we're going to have to do surgery. And so they did a 10-hour surgery to take out the broken plates, but they had to put a rod in. I thought maybe they'd just put a cast on it, but there was still a non-union of 2 inches. And they had to put a rod in, and I don't know if you know Dr. Sherman, but Dr.
Plastic surgery?
Yes,
I do.
you do. So it was a team, because I had a muscle flap, so the plastic surgeon had to be there to bring over the muscle flap, which was the blood supply for the leg, and they took it all out. And Dr. Wiss, it took him hours and hours, and thank God he didn't give up and just go, you know what, this is just too much, we're going to just amputate it. Dr. Sherman said, I've never seen he was laughing, I've never seen Dr. West sweat so much in my life. I guess he had sweat coming down. But he knew how hard I worked in physical therapy and at the gym to get back and walk. And he explained it as it's kind of like a big oak tree. If you took the limb and you bent it a little bit, it wouldn't snap. But if you did it every day, it would eventually snap. And he said that the hardware was only as good as fast as your body could heal until it just was like, okay, we've had it and it's broken. So now I have a beautiful wind chime made out of those broken pieces of titanium. Yeah, and so, you make lemon out of lemonade. And that wind chime reminds me, I hear it, it's hanging outside by our porch, and it reminds me that, the human spirit is capable of rising up, and we are physically capable of rising up again and again.
Will they take the rod and the implants eventually?
No, that's
It's gonna be
staying.
there.
That's staying. I think I'm done with surgeries. Yeah, I have metal in my toes all the way up to my knee. Yeah, my right leg. Yeah.
So how does that work at the airport? Do you just carry a card or something?
I actually do have a card.
They got pins and screws too. I haven't flown yet, but
Yeah,
eventually
yeah. My doctor gave me a card to carry. They usually don't even ask for it.
yeah.
Because they could see there's nothing, it's just her foot, well, what's going on, and I was like, it's...
I asked mine, he's just like, there's nothing. And I was like, they're gonna stop you. So
Yeah.
So they got 8 screws, 2 pins.
Yeah, sometimes it may not even set it off.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
Yeah, titanium doesn't.
Mine did. It
Yeah,
may
but
be the
that's
screws
probably-
in it. I don't know. It read it today.
If you have a lot, you probably.
Do you run again?
I can run, and the doctor, I was so excited to get out of the hospital the first time, and there was a pulmonary doctor in there, and he said, well, you get to go home. I said, I know, I can't wait to train clients again. I can't wait to run again. And he goes, well, you'll probably never run again, and you'll certainly never wear shorts again. And I was just heartbroken, and I was devastated. And all that I was hearing was, you're going to need to be on antidepressants. You're going to be really depressed. You're not going to run. You may not walk. Then when I started walking, and I was so proud, and I had hopes that I'm getting better, I'm going to be running, was when I was told, you need to get back in your wheelchair. And so I went straight to physical therapy instead. And I did little by little. At first I couldn't even ride a bike because my leg was stuck straight. I leaned across the physical therapy place. I said, look, Terry, I did it. He goes, it's not pretty. And I was I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep working. And I ran, it took me 2 years, but I ran again on the beach with my daughter. It was one of the happiest days of my life. And I can still run. I can go for a little jog a little bit with my daughter here and there, but I've learned that it doesn't really serve me anymore because it's the pounding that flares me up. So I don't do it. And especially, on a hard surface, I can run in some soft sand. Not even certain beaches, there's no way I could run. Even the sand will flare me up, just walking on the sand. But I can hike. And I love hiking and being out in nature. So I think the key is really to, for a long time I was real focused on I can't run, and I was really depressed about it because it was my favorite, that's what I did for fun. And now I focus on, well, I can't run, but I can still hike, and I can swim, I can bike.
Amberly was considered an Olympic hopeful in high school as a runner, just so you know.
Yeah, it was my life. I loved it.
Can I ask just as a follow-up, because you mentioned earlier that running was your way of keeping your focus.
kind of clear your mind, do you use hiking? What do you use for that nap? Is it hiking? Like, what do you
Being
use
out
for that?
in nature, hiking for sure, but also every morning I start my day with a morning ritual. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm on vacation or if I have an early day or if I'm off at a conference and I'm going to be speaking all, it doesn't matter where I am. I always have my morning ritual, whether I'm at home or in a hotel room or, you know, anywhere. And it helps me set my intention for the day. So I start off my day, and I mean, when I first wake up, I look like 100-year-old cowboy walking. It's like I can barely walk, and I need time to get moving. And so I set my alarm earlier so I can have time, a short meditation, journaling, and it doesn't take long. I move my body. This morning I woke up and I did some downward dog. I did a few push-ups just to get the blood going, and I really wrote and thought about my intention. So that's how I clear my head, and I always read out of a couple of spiritual books too. For me, I'm a very spiritual person, not so much like a religious person. I grew up with a lot of religion, and my daughter goes to Catholic school, and it's hilarious because now all of a sudden she's coming home doing all that. I'm like, what are you doing? And so, but I pray, you know, I always, for me, I call it God. Some people call it nature or spirit or light or universe. I call it God. And so I have a connection to my higher power. I always ask my higher power to come in and walk with me so I don't feel alone, because sometimes with pain especially, you can tend to isolate or feel like you're the only one going through it. And so that way I feel like I'm never alone.
I actually have two quick questions. One, do you ever have days where either the pain or the fatigue from dealing with the pain are so overwhelming that you're not able to get out of bed? Do you ever have those days anymore?
Absolutely.
And how do you not kick yourself in the butt for those days?
Well,
when you talk about the shame.
It's very emotional. It's an emotional roller coaster when you have those days. They're further and fewer between because I've started to finally listen to my body. Before I was, you know, I grew up a dancer and an athlete where in dance, so what if your toes are bleeding, you're in point shoes and the show must go on. And an athlete, I don't care if you're throwing up, get off the track to throw up and keep going. And so I really had to learn to listen to my body more and know my limits, and you have to know when you can push past where you thought you could go or just push the envelope a little bit more, and when to learn to give yourself the gift of grace and rest. And I think it's really important to give yourself permission to rest, because really what that is, it's giving yourself love and respecting yourself enough to listen to your body. And also I think it's, would you treat your friend that way? Would you talk to a friend? Like when you're beat, because I can beat myself up all day long. I can be my own worst enemy. That voice will just start chattering up there, telling me I'm not good enough. Who do you think you are? You're not worthy. All these things. Then I have to go, wait a minute. Would I talk to my best friend the way that I'm talking to myself? And usually the answer is no. So you have to like check yourself.
And then my other question was, do you find that sharing your story, not only are you helping other people, but that it helps you so much, not because you're being in service, but because it reminds you of how far you've come from the worst day when you thought you were gonna lose your leg or your life to not being able to walk. I was in a wheelchair, so when you talked about not being able to walk and then the first time you could walk again, telling your story, it kind of, like when I do, it reminds me of how far I've come. Do you find that that helps you also?
Yeah, because I think
gratitude and those things.
I think it's easy to forget sometimes, and it's also, you know, we have to remember to celebrate those small victories along the way. Because I can just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and I think it's really important to celebrate those times when it's like, hey, I made it to the gym.
Yeah.
Or hey, today I got through the day and I eat healthy all day long. Or hey, I got through the day and I did not tell myself one negative thought all day. But I think it's very healing when you can share your story in a safe place. You know, I have a friend of mine who, she's a suicide survivor. She tried to commit suicide and she had to have brain surgery and she's had to learn to walk again and do a lot of things again. And she got my newsletter and she called me and she goes, you know, I'm really depressed about your newsletter. And I was like, oh no, it's for inspiration. I'm not trying to depress you. And she said, well, there's a picture of you jumping up in the air. And I said, well, first of all, comparison is the thief of joy. It doesn't ever really usually make you feel good. But I said, second of all, I said, I don't go around jumping up in the air all the time. That was a good day. I was exciting. It was for a split second and I'm jumping up in the air and I do it off of one leg. And some days I can't do that, you know, and it took me 8 years to be able to do that. So I'm going to do it whenever I can. And it's on, you know, your accident was only a year ago. So it's really easy. And I think now more than ever to get caught up on, well, I should be able, look at what she's doing or look at what he's doing.
With social media, everybody posts all the good things.
All the highlight
Right.
reel of everything's good and shiny and glamorous. But as we all know in here, people that raised their hand when we were, you know, who has chronic pain, who's been diagnosed with CRPS, life isn't always easy and it's not always good. And so to remind ourselves that, okay, well, I'm going to go to the toolbox and what tool do I need to use today to pull myself up out of this? Because what works for you one day may not work another day.
Have you ever struggled with the depression and anxiety or anything?
Absolutely.
You ever took any kind of medication for depression?
Yeah, and I think medication can be a lifesaver for people, and if it's the right medication, I had every doctor, including everyone from my gynecologist to the pulmonary doctor to the orthopedic, everybody was like, you better take antidepressants. You're going to be really depressed. I don't know. I mean, everybody told me you need to take antidepressants. And I said, if I can just work out, I know I'll be okay. And the psychologist said, you're crazy. And I was like, left there in tears, called my husband. They said I was crazy. And he's like, well, you kind of are. And, but I tried antidepressants for like 3 months, like different pills. I threw up every single time. It didn't work for me. I know what works for me for depression is moving my body, and I use that PACER acronym. That's not just some word that I came up with that helped me, and now I'm just resilient. It's something I use every single day, especially on hard days where I have to shift my perspective. I have to accept what's going on, because if we don't accept what's going on in our life, whether it's our how we're feeling, how our relationship is, the job we have, our friends that have, we don't accept what's going on, then we can't do things to fix it. Community, thank God you guys have this community. C is for community, E is for endurance. For, you know, that's when it's good to have passion. Do something that makes you feel good. That's why I love the art program here too, because it gives you something to look forward to. It gives you that passion to do something. And then the R for rest, giving yourself permission. You know, today I think everybody's like, you gotta hustle, you gotta grind, you gotta go. And then it's a luxury when you rest, and it shouldn't be a luxury. It's a necessity for resilience. A lot of times we're charging our phones more than we're charging ourselves, and we really need to take a step back and give ourselves enough respect to rest, you know, just to take care of ourselves. But yeah, I definitely struggled with depression and anxiety. In fact, this time last year, I was coming, I think it was to meet you for the first time in person.
That would make you depressed.
That was so depressing. I had a lot of anxiety because I had just left LA, was on fire. Then I get to my hotel room and they're telling me, my husband calls, we're gonna be evacuated. And here I am miles away. And I had so much anxiety and I was like, well, now's the time to use Pacer. And so I did, and it worked. Right before I was gonna go give my TEDx talk, I was feeling like, oh my God, who am I to go give a TEDx talk? I'm the only speaker that doesn't have a PhD. I was freaking out and I was so nervous. I was full of anxiety. The only thing that helped was to take action, was to get up and do something that even if it was a small step, like go practice the talk once through. And 3 days before I was going to give my talk, my daughter had the flu. I had just gotten out of the emergency room. I'm susceptible to like infections. Even if I have a little nick on my leg, I can get an infection in my leg. So I gotten out of the ER, I was on antibiotics. I'm going upstairs to practice my talk and running downstairs, and I hold the throw up bucket for my daughter and my back goes out. So now I'm laying on the floor, my back's out. I'm thinking my daughter's hoarse, she can't talk. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna get this. I won't be able to walk on stage. I'll lose my voice. I'm gonna get sick. Like all these thoughts. And my girlfriend texted me and she's like, how you doing? And I'm like, not good. I'm like freaking out. And she texted me one word back, Pacer. And I was like, oh, wow. Thanks, universe, for teaching me to really believe in my message. Like that was a test. Like if I can get rid of this anxiety and if I can pull it together. And so I used it. I went through those steps. The next morning I woke up, my back felt better. It wasn't 100%, but it felt better. And I think it's because my anxiety was down. I didn't get the flu. I went out and it made me believe in my message more because I knew, okay, it works. Like, okay, I was put to the test and so I use it. That's what I use. But my brother, depression runs in our family. My brother is on antidepressants and that works for him. Didn't work for me, it works for him. It worked for my grandfather, it works for my mom, it works for, I'm just outing my whole family here. Everybody takes it in my family.
Is it possible to see Pacer again?
I actually wrote it down for everyone who wants it. So
great.
you guys, yeah.
You talk about it a lot.
And you know what?
You'd like to incorporate that.
If you guys I know where you can get this. If you guys are on social media, if you're on Instagram, if you go into my bio, in my links, there's a downloadable, it says Goals, Grit, and Grace Playbook, and it talks about Pacer and describes that more, and it's free. And it's a good thing to just get you set. You could be a part of your morning routine just to help, just a little tool to help you get through, and it's free. You can it's downloadable.
So I think Amberly was nice enough to bring books to share with you guys.
Yes, I'd love to give a book to anybody who wants a book.
If you guys would like to, whoever's interested who doesn't already have one, would like to come up and say hello and grab a book, this might be a good time. We want to thank you.
Mike,
Thank you.